Well, we will also have some comments in the end. If somebody wants to say something, we will have time for that. And now I would like to invite Eva Solina Gultom from Indonesia, if she is connected.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you, Irina. Is my screen visible right now?
Yes.
Okay. So before I start, I would like to thank you for Ibu Risa for allowing me to be one of the presenters today. My concern nowadays is about my local culture, which is Ulos. So my topic or my title today is Ulos Traditional Weaving Resilience in Lumban, SUHI-SUHI, Toruan, SAMOSIR village in the post-COVID-19 recovery. So for introduction, Lumban, SUHI-SUHI, Toruan, SAMOSIR, and the title just now is one of the villages near to Lake Toba, one of the largest lake in Southeast Asia, and now is known as an Ulos center. During pandemic, the production or the manufacture of this traditional cloth is limited. However, after the outbreak, the government started to relax the community mobility space and then try to revive the tourism sectors, including the survival of traditional weaving by collaborating with local government. And then one of my backgrounds here is, in order to ensure the existence of this traditional clothes, this village finally undertake revitalization in order to promote local pride and acknowledge the artistic abilities of the Batak people. So in here, I would like to reinforce that Batak people is, Batak is one of the tribes in North Sumatra, and I am the part of it. And for the objective of this paper, I would like to show you how the traditional clothes or ulos weaving in this village as a tourism village survive, especially after the pandemic. And then for the method itself, I took in-depth interviews with some relative people. And after that, I did field observations and also digital resources. From I found on the field, I saw that this village preserved the heritage by reviving the weaving consistency. So they did Martonon Sadari. It means like weaving for a whole day, and then it aims to demonstrate a traditional ulos manufacture, because nowadays the weavers in this village are scarce, and only women who age 40 years and above who consistently weaving this traditional cloth. And then for the technical, it is also shown that during the weaving for a whole day, the Ulos weavers will show how to weave this cloth while explaining the philosophy of life and Batak rights to the visitors. And then another result that I found that in order to preserve the existence of this traditional clothes, the local government conducted fashion show in order to not only to inform young generation and also to preserve the long-term viability of this heritage, especially Ulos. And then this event aims to honor the weavers as cultural warriors and As a result, several Batak fashion designers also took part in this event. And then this event didn't only showcase about the fashion show, but also they introduced tortor dances. So tortor is one of the traditional dances from North Sumatra, and also Batak musical instruments or gondang naposo. And then they also perform some opera. And to conclude, I found that the resilience of Ulos as a traditional cloth has proven that the ancient weaving industry can survive due to artistic inventiveness and negotiating abilities. So no matter what happens before or after the pandemic, Ulos as the pride of Batak local culture still exists, and then it is still recognized by substantial artistic potential. That is the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Eva, for your presentation. I'm not sure that Adrian Guzman is connected.
I'm here. Good.
Are you here?
Good to see you.
Oh, Adrian, glad to see you.
Glad to see you.
I checked the list of participants and I didn't see it. So we will also have presentation from Mexico.
Yes, unfortunately, I couldn't be online. I just finished another conference. I gave to Italy, so I was pretty much in the in the Italian. Hello, how are you, Professoressa De Rosa? Mi fa molto piacere vederla.
Nice to meet you, to see you again. Incredible as life, no?
Questa è casa sua in Messico quando volete.
Grazie.
Allora,
would you start with your presentation, Adrian?
yes, of course. It's a very conceptual presentation. I didn't want to make it well. I wanted to present it in the way we did it because it was not part of an academic process. So maybe you can help me out with that in the near future. But I'm going to explain you what we did at the university, how we did it, the process, and how it was taking the development from a conceptual thing into an actual experiment and development of a technology. I cannot present it with the same rigor of the academy because there were companies that participating on it. So let me just go a little bit on the slides. So this is the university from where I'm graduated, but as well as the university where I teach. I teach at the program in applied communication, so it's a great pleasure to share this, at least this small effort with you and with my colleagues in Europe. So, hola, this is the main way to introduce ourselves here in Mexico. So it's un chao. So just to give you a small brief of how the university is in Mexico. It's segmented in many different departments. The university where I teach, it's pretty much this campus multiplied by 10. So it's a university with 10 different campuses on 10 different cities. So the project initially took place in one of the campus, which was Puebla, and it was in a first interaction we have with Harvard University, and that was with Steven Pinker. And a second one was a couple of years later with Philip Zimbardo from Stanford University in a different campus in the same university. we wanted to call this architecture of movement and politics of cell space, and I'm going to try to justify also the name in the design of the experiment. So everybody is aware, and it's part of the social psychology, the well-known experiment of the Stanford prison, which was developed by Philip Zimbardo, which was a social experiment. But this was a very disruptive experiment at the time. What we wanted to do was to observe isolation cases in individuals interacting in social, in a social perspective, in a social landscape, but without being intrusive. I mean, this means that we wanted to observe without observing, which is the most critical scenario for disruptive practices like this one. I mean, the experiment, as I mentioned, it was trying to design a way to observe without the process of observing. And this is an innovative and changing way. We wanted to do it with a novel technology, which is an internet or internet connection, which goes through the electrical connection. So in order to improve this version of the Stanford prison experiment, where there were not supposed to be rules or carcerators or things like that, but just the level of isolation of the individuals. A setup was designed so human observers were not present, were not allowed to be, no video cameras as well, only the sensors of the PLC technology on the electrical connectivity. So just to explain it in a general way, it was a sensor through the connectors of the electrical grid, which only sends the movement of the individuals that were present in this simulated environment. So we could gather data of how people move within their room. We could gather data of how people interact with other people within the room. We could gather data of how objects were moved within the room, but we didn't know who the individuals were, only by the assignment of the room. I mean, we know that individual A was in the room A, for example, individual B was in the room B, but we didn't know, I mean, how they look physically, for example. We didn't know how they were behaving in an observable way, like we are doing right now. For example, if one person scratched their nose, we didn't actually know if they were scratching their nose. We only knew what was happening in terms of movement within the rooms. So we could measure in a very low level the interactions. So for each of the rooms, which were 8 rooms, 8 participants were selected for a week, and they were inhabiting this space. I mean, they were present, but they were not real present, no? If we can say it like that. So the rooms were interconnected by a main hallway, a main atrium, but they were completely and independently isolated as rooms from the ambient noises. So you couldn't hear what the next room was happening, no? And within these rooms, we have also independent access doors, which means you could see the hallway, and just to describe you the architecture, you could see the highway, but you can see when the people who enter these rooms enter. I mean, they enter it into an independent door to the room in order to have no initial interaction between the individuals. Only when they are in the room, they are allowed to have the interaction to the hallway. So they haven't seen each other between the interactions. So the rooms were interconnected by a main atrium, as I mentioned it, but the complex didn't exceed the dimensions of the sizes of the room, which is pretty much, it was a 60 square meters cover extension of the facility, sorry. So the central idea was that each one of these rooms have normal electricity connectors. People was not aware that these normal electricity connectors were actually the sensors. They were just requested to participate in a sociological experiment, no? And the idea was that at the same time that the sensors were activated, these sensors were connected through new technology to an internet connection. The technology is called PLC. So the idea is that the sensors, which were installed in different ways within the spaces, have to function at the same time as normal electricity connectors. And this is because that's the main purpose of the technology. I mean, that was the main purpose of the technology. I mean, the technology was to prove the objective was to prove that the technology functioned as an internet connection, and the technology functioned also as an electrical connection and as a sensor. So the sensors monitor and record different movements of these volunteers during their stay, and potentially the data was collected and identified between the individuals, and how these individuals volunteer from each room to allow access to other people interacting with them. Sorry, if you have questions, you can interrupt me at any time. So the design of the experiments was that there was no video cameras. The sensors allowed by themselves the study segmented the interaction between the individuals in real time. And this allowed us to analyze the natural dynamics of how different groups were formed. For example, in one case, we have an individual which was allowing a different individual from another room to enter into his personal space, his room, no? And this was not exactly the same case with other individuals, no? So when this first interaction happened, we were allowed to measure. So many different questions were put on the study, like, for example, how is that these individuals modify their own space according to the scarcity or abundance of resources. For example, food. We have people who have food on their rooms, and they didn't share with other individuals. But we have other people who have food as part of their spaces and their resources, and didn't share it with other individuals. You know? At the same time, all the movements were registered, which was something that the initial experiment didn't have, because the initial experiment was an observable experiment, and this was specifically for the movement of the individuals, which didn't have like a present identity on the record of the experiment. Explain or say it in another words, if one person was in a room, we didn't know which person was. We only knew what the movement of these persons were. I mean, we didn't have a physical identification. We didn't know if it was a person of color, if it was an old age or middle age person. We only could measure the interactions. So the space of each individual could be associated with the background only in the initial file which was requested for them. For example, what profession it was, in which discipline they work, and in a manner through a questionnaire, what kind of norms they could be attached to, or for. So it's absolutely crucial that the technology used in this experiment can record and monitor the activities through an internet connection. And the condition for the development or the sponsorship of the experiment was that it should be made or done through an electrical connection. And this was a technology, well, novel technology, where we have also a prototype called PLC. So given the future studies of the experiment and how can they be associated with several research and development areas, the experiment can turn into many other different experiments that can be segmented in micro experiments, produce different sort of sensors. They can benefit the industry in terms of more applied and selective applications. And I can give you just a very small example of how the results studies were presented, which was the creation of new generations of sensors that can be connected 7, 24, and 360 days a year through the internet, but also through the electrical grid of the already established network. So derived from the type of records obtained by these sensors, we could say that many sociological and psychological studies can be carried out, and they are not proposed as being disruptive. They are transparent in a way that they actually measure all daily activities of the participants without being intrusive, because it's only a measurement of movement and not a measurement of the activity itself. This valuable data was obtained in real time, and also we could observe the group dynamics. And the data as well was used for the exploitation of the appropriation of space. What we call as an exploitation of appropriation of space was when some sort of we cannot say trust relationship were established, because we couldn't observe or hear the interaction, just the movement. Once that we see that this exploitation of the appropriation of the space was established, was when trust was generated and people was allowed to move and to interact beyond the initial rooms that they were assignated. So as for the design offices purposes, which was also one of the sponsors, we can say that we could identify very wide range of products. For example, how people like to arrange their own personal space, considering the different interactions they are having since the first initial personal interaction. Sorry. The participants involved were co-financed by companies in the energy sector, and also one public sector-related company, which is CFE Mexico. And the design and installation of the PLC network was also made by contribution of a local company, and the modified sensors were also a contribution from a local company investing in this sort of plug electrical connectors to the existing electrical network. Two university institutions provided involvement of an interdisciplinary team. As I mentioned, one was in Puebla and another one in Mexico. And we have two students of architecture in order to make the maqueta, we call it in Spanish. Sorry, I forgot the name in English. We have one student from industrial design, which was from a completely different university, and one from interactive design in order to make the small box for record the variables we wanted in through the sensors. I mean, the sensors already exist. I mean, we didn't have like to modify program or do anything. We have two computer engineers students and one psychologist and one sociologist, which were part of the this is the end. I cannot be very detailed on how the results of the experiments were developed or proposed, but I'm open to questions if you want to do any. I know it's not really like an academical work, but I'm pretty open to hear your comments from your psychological perspective.
Thank you, Adrian, for your presentation. It was quite interesting and it was quite different from all other presentations. It showed an experimental approach in a very interesting way. We will have discussion after two more presentations.
Sure, okay.
And now I would like to invite Lusiana Limono from Indonesia.
Hello, from Malang, Indonesia. Happy to see you all. Let me introduce myself. My name is Lusiana Limono. I'm from postgraduate program, Jakarta Institute of Arts. My academic background is in textile craft. I would like to share my presentations. Can you see my presentations?
Yes.
Okay. So this is my family background. I grew up in a family where the male members were carpenters and merchants, while the female members were dressmakers. The smooth, soft, and supple quality of the clothes are the qualities that are expected to be found in women. In contrary, the hard, strong, rigid are the qualities that attach to men. From this experience, I think that cloth is identical to women, while wood identical to men. Activities related to cloth production is dominated by women. That fact makes the gender notion as a common sense. And then in 2018, I had the opportunity doing textile research in a remote island called LOMBLEN. Here the red dots, this is Indonesian map, and LOMBLEN is here. LOMBLEN is quite isolated island. It's part of East Nusa Tenggara province, regarded as the three regions by the government, means leading, outermost, and lagging. Before, I knew this island only from textile literature. People still weaving clothes using hand-spun cotton and natural dye. This research was intended for mapping textile craft on the island, but it turns out that I found something else. I met a master weaver in the slope of Mount Ileape, she said that wood is female. This statement bothers me because it is contradictory with my previous understanding. So this study objective is to search for relation between gender and materiality. In Lomblen, the needs of woven cloth is essential. The people wear woven sarung or tubular cloth every day and everywhere. The people live simply and modestly. They weave cloth to commemorating life events and rituals, even for exchange. Woven cloth is highly valued. Speaking of rituals, we need to see their daily life. Lomblen people believe that the union of men and women is something divine. Lomblen people mostly convert to Catholicism, but still practice rituals based on local belief system. They call the mighty creator as Ama Lera Wulan, Ina Tanah Ekan. Ama means father, Lera Wulan means sun and stars, while Ina means mother and Tanah Ekan means earth and soils. Their belief system reflects gender-based division of labor. It also reflects on their daily tools and objects. Men in charge of finding source of livelihood. Women in charge of managing, caring for, and providing the needs of the family. Cooperation between men and women is aimed at survival. We can see here that men's daily activities are tapping sap, hunting deer for inland men, fishing for those on the coast, and working abroad as migrant workers. Men activities are mostly outside, and something like conquering, associated with the nature of the sun and distant stars, which those objects determine for planting times, harvest season, and time to go to sea. Their tools are made of metals and shining like stars. We can see here. So men's tools are mostly knives and connected with hunting. And then while women daily activities are cooking, gardening, weaving, and exchange goods. Their activities are carried out around their domestic space. These are associated with the nature of earth. Earth soil is a place where living things grow. It has the quality of giving, nurturing, and protecting. The tools come from the ground. Women's tools. So the importance of women's role for the balance of the universe is shown through the dyeing house. So every clan have a dyeing house dedicated for keeping women's tools in every clan. Related to nurturing and protecting, Lomblen people think that the house is female. Their house is made of wood. A house protects its inhabitants from the weather and wild animals. It is a metaphor of a woman protecting a family. It is also in line with the protective function of cloth. A strong marker of this is the presence of of the press carving. Another sound.
It seems to me that Professor De Rosa hasn't turned off her microphone.
Yeah, thank you. A strong marker of this is the presence of the breast carving at the entrance of the traditional house. Here we can see the breast carving. Breast is a female symbol, house built by men, cared for and supported by women. The mechanism of the house is understood as women's body that is fertile, nourishes and protects. Bones and flesh are like the supporting woods, woven bamboos and palm fiber roof. The kitchen is the womb, which is the core of life. From this perspective, Lumban people associate wood and clothes with women. Women with clothes to protect the body. From this cosmology and division of labor, it can be understood why cloth is important as a protector. This is the results. Lumban local belief system shows gender relation. It reveals gender equality. Lumban women weaver construct their identity using cloth and wood. Together, they make up gender of Lumban women. They express themselves through things they make, things they wear, things they use in daily lives. Things and objects becomes a medium of communications. Textile tradition expose truth which cannot express in words. Here we can see sorry. My slide is here we can see that men who are in charge in building house and carrying out rituals, while women play a role behind the scenes preparing offerings and clothes. In this case, women show their important existence through clothes and cuisines. These outcomes are using woods. That's why they see wood as female. In this case, cloth is not associated with soft, smooth, and supple qualities. It contains strong, flexible, and independent qualities. While cotton yarn is hand-spun then dyed, hand spinning creates uneven and rough yarn texture. Plain dyeing makes the yarn stiff. The woven cloth is thick and strong. These qualities are in line with wood. For Lumban weaver, both cloth and wood are female. This shows how women weaver of Lumban construct their identity using cloth and wood. This is also confirmed by another weaver that she said that from dawn until dusk, women activities in Lumban are related with wood. So she said that Lumban women have to be strong like wood and flexible like cloth. This shows a different gender construction of material with mind. So conclusions, so far the construction of gender only refers to a modern system in the Western sense. It turns out that gender construction is also closely related with to cosmology. It reflects in people's daily lives through object, material, culture, and their representations. Gender construction contextual according to social space and cultural practice. In the context of Lumban culture, the masculine is no higher than the feminine. Through materials and objects, Lumban weavers showed that women were not second-class citizens in the social hierarchy. Thank you.
Thank you a lot for your presentation. It is quite an interesting research in the context of gender relations, which can be different in different cultures. Thank you. I really appreciate it. It was really interesting. And I would like to invite our next presentation from David Rafael Tandayu. from Indonesia, and I guess it is the last presentation, and then we will have discussion of this set of presentations, and then the final reflection. David,